Hello there, what's going on everybody? Today we're going to be talking about the Superstar Destroyer for Armada because FFG just had their live stream featuring the Superstar Destroyer. There was a lot of information presented, a lot of gameplay, a lot of stuff we already knew, but because it was live and had audience questions available, there were also some questions that were answered. Some of these were things we assumed to be true but needed some confirmation on. Some of these things were things that were unexpected, so very, very cool stuff. And before I dive into some of the highlights, I do want to remind you guys there is still time to enter the giveaway for a $25 Amazon gift card for an expansion of your choice or to put down towards maybe a Superstar Destroyer, or you can use for whatever thing you want. All you have to do to enter to win that giveaway is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. So let's go ahead and start talking about some of the cool talking points about this SSD. First off, I want to talk about how awesome it looked. People don't really understand how big this thing is. 25 inches long is really, really big. Just to give you a scale, that's like twice the size of the X-Wing huge ships. And you've seen my Bellator, that's only about the size of one of the X-Wing huge ships. So this Bellator, which is much, much bigger than an ISD, figure like twice that long. This thing is gonna be absolutely massive, and it's gonna take up, the most presence on your battlefield. So it looked really, really cool. Looked great in play. Very happy to see that. So that was cool. We got some gameplay demonstrations, and it was just, good back and forth interaction with the SSD. There were certain questions that were definitely asked by a lot of people that weren't answered, so that makes me kind of wonder if either maybe they weren't ready to be answered or if they just, were too busy dealing with other stuff. But I still have more questions in the future. But I was actually able to be on the stream and ask some questions, not on the stream, but I was in the audience during the stream, so I was able to ask a couple of questions. We got a couple of good ones answered. So the first thing I want to talk about is commanders. Your commanders that you're going to be able to do. They confirmed a couple of things. First off, Jerjerrod. Jerjerrod absolutely works with the Superstar Destroyer. A lot of people assumed that, but it's good to have confirmation. Just because the base is, the footprint for this thing is so big, getting that extra click from him is such a big deal. People are like, is that really going to work? It wasn't I think the question was more from the point of not, does this work? But more like, is this really going to work? Because that's where some of these questions were. Things that might have seemed overpowered. And sure enough, it absolutely does work. And speaking of movement is not done from the front of, in one of my first Bellator bat reps, I was trying to simulate a Superstar Destroyer build, and I was doing movement from the front. It's actually done from the front of the rear base, so basically movement from the middle. So that, also was something that I had heard that it might be that way, so it was good to get confirmation of that. So we know what movement is from the middle. Jerjerrod works. So if you're going to do Jerjerrod, you're doing that double turn from the middle. Gives it a decent amount of mobility if you want to do that. Considering you could do a nav at speed 2 and get your 2 clicks from Jerjerrod plus 1 click on the last speed, you could actually get some really nice maneuverability out of such a ship that has no maneuverability. So very, very cool. I had asked about Mahdi and also about Constantine, how they were going to interact with the Superstar Destroyer. I didn't get an answer for Constantine, but I think my Mahdi answer will satisfy both. They pointed out very specifically that Mahdi works on small, medium, and large ships. There is nothing on his card that talks about huge ships. Therefore, Mahdi doesn't work with huge ships. The intent was that they were trying to make sure that the Superstar Destroyer kind of works just as written for as many things as possible. So that kind of answers my Constantine question as well, which I'm a little upset about, is that there was nothing, not upset. I mean, Constantine is just, he is what he is. Maybe he could use with a whole rewrite. There's a lot of discussion to be had about Constantine, if something should be done about Constantine, or if we should just chalk him up to a loss and move on. I think one of the consensus is, Constantine's just not good. He's just not going to be very good. Let's just forget about him and move on to the next admiral. And I'm okay with that, I suppose. But I think it would be kind of cool if Constantine at least was given a pass for the Superstar Destroyer and said, okay, fine. If your ship, basically the Superstar Destroyer would count as a sufficient criteria to trigger Constantine's effect. For those of you who aren't familiar, Constantine allows you to adjust the speeds of enemy ships if they're within a range of at least 2 medium or larger ships, medium or large ships, but he doesn't say larger. He says medium or large. And since the Superstar Destroyer is a huge ship, and you're probably only going to have one, you're probably not going to have any other medium or large ships. It's possible, but Not as likely. It would be nice if Constantine's effect would trigger just off of the Superstar Destroyer itself, considering it does have 2 large bases there. But I don't think that's the case because it says medium or large. So there you go. So that's an interesting thing. Now deployment is going to deploy as normal in the deployment zone, or you can have it extend outside of a deployment zone. So instead of having to go, I'll just use this to kind of paraphrase. Instead of having to go right here, and be stuck within that range 3, you can have it stick its nose outside of the deployment zone, no problem, as long as the rear of it is touching the rear of your deployment area. So that is something that was kind of cool they pointed out. They also said that if you are deploying squadrons based off of that, they still cannot go beyond, I think it was distance 5 or something. They can't go beyond where they would normally have been able to go anyway. So you're not going to get a squadron advantage out of this, but you are going to be able to, at least point towards the enemy, which is a good thing because otherwise the SSD might end up being virtually unplayable or require Gergerod just so you can turn around. So that's a good thing. Now the pass token, I want to talk about the pass token. Based on the first Superstar Destroyer article, I had interpreted the pass token as being slightly different than Strategic Officer because it said when you must activate the Star Destroyer, you can then pass. So I thought it meant like if this is your only ship, if you must. Like an example in the game, there was a Superstar Destroyer and 2 Raiders, and he passes, but he still could have activated the Raiders. So basically some clarification on the pass token. Apparently it works just like Strategic Officer. You can use it instead, basically if you have other ships too, you can stall for your other ships. So in other words, you can use it exactly like Strategic Officer. So that was good. So I thought it had to be like you had to activate all your other ships first, and then once the Superstar Destroyer was the only ship left, then you could pass. But instead, it looks like it works just like Strategic Officer, so you can do it at any time. I'm pretty sure you will have to have the Superstar Destroyer ready in order to pass. Like if you activate it first, you probably lose your ability to pass, again, just like Strategic Officer. But it's good to know these little things. Especially for those of us who are still going to be waiting a couple more months and, want to run some mock bat reps, especially games on Vassal or, games with homemade printed bases, kind of like what I will do with the Bellator sometimes. So we talked about the pass token and deployment. Obstacles, there were some questions about obstacles and ramming, and I believe the consensus was that ramming and obstacles are handled just like normal. You're same as every other ship. There's no special rules for obstacles. They're still going to suffer the effects of any obstacles that they overlap. And ramming is going to work exactly the same way as well. I guess one natural thing for ramming though, since if you had like an SSD with a reinforced hull, well, that's not really going to benefit it as much because it's definitely huge is larger than a large. So if it only protects you against smaller ships, that's fine. So, you're still going to be able to ram a huge ship and have it take damage, even if they've got, a large ship, even if they've got, the hardened bulkheads upgrade. We're coming up on some big ones, but before I get that, let's talk about enhanced armament. This was asked about enhanced armament. What will it do? Does it affect all of the sides? And the answer to that is no. This was something that I assumed to be true, because they said there were going to be auxiliary arcs. In addition to your left and right arc. And my guess was that the left and right arc would be the top 2 and the auxiliary arcs would be the bottom 2 or the rear 2 side arcs. And that was confirmed. So enhanced armament only affects the top 2 or the front left and front right, whereas the rear left and rear right are considered auxiliary left and auxiliary right, and therefore are not affected by things that will affect something that affects your left and right arc. Like if, for example, you had Akbar on the Imperial side, he would only affect those front, right, and left shots, not the rear, left, and right shots. So that's good to know. Speaking of things that are going to be different on the Superstar Destroyer, you cannot add any upgrade slots to the Superstar Destroyer. So somebody like Minister Tua will not be able to go on the Superstar Destroyer. You're not going to be able to get a defensive retrofit on any version of the Superstar Destroyer. And that rule is going to hold true for all huge ships. That's going to be a huge ship across the board rule. This is big. This is very big because this means no ECM on the Superstar Destroyer, no advanced projectors on the Superstar Destroyer, no defensive retrofit at all. And that's a big deal. And there was some reasoning given for this one too, and it makes a lot of sense. Brooks was talking about this. He said, well, we would have had to make it, considering we were given it so many officer slots, it was at a point where if it had, if you could take Tua and get ECM on there, that would have been the standard. It would have been like an auto include, and you would have had to design it from the ground up, assuming that was going to be there. So then if it was there, it would have been too powerful. But if it wasn't there, it would have been underpowered. And so we designed it the way we wanted it to be, and just, and that makes sense. So I like that. And that seems balanced. I think you could even look at it canonically from the standpoint of it has a defensive retrofit already. It's called 22 hull or 33 hull, respectively. And that's about where it needs to be. Like, honestly, if a ship had a defensive retrofit that gave it like an 11 extra hull, of course you would take that over everything else, because that's going to trump everything. So there you go. That's basically one way to look at it. So yes, no Tua, no anything that's going to add extra upgrade slots. So I think I don't think there's really much else for the Empire that can do that at present. Another example might be like Phoenix Home. I know it does that for the Rebels, but Phoenix Home is that title that adds an extra crew slot. I don't think you would be able to do that for the Empire if a similar title or similar upgrade were to come out. So that's interesting. And then the biggest news, I believe, was the hull upgrade. Not the hull upgrade, but the hull ruling is that half points, basically. If you're able to bring your opponent's Super Star Destroyer down to half of its hull, then you're going to get a lot of points. You're going to get half of the points for the ship itself, just the ship itself, and you're going to get all of the points for the equipped upgrades. That's a big deal. Now, that's at the end of the game. So they still have time to repair. So at the end of the game, let's say I'm running a 400-point game, I've got a 22 hull Super Star Destroyer. You take out all my shields and get 10 hull damage on my ship. End of the game, you get no points for it. But if you get 11 hull points on it, and I'm not able to repair it past that, you're going to get all the points for the ship itself, so 200 and something points, and you're going to get points for all of the equipped upgrades. So so maybe half of the 200 something. So it's like 100 points for the ship. And so if I run a one ship build and plan on just running engineering every turn, it can be hard to kill. All right, it can be really hard to kill that if you're running purely defensively. The good news for everybody who's ever going to play against a Super Star Destroyer at this point is you don't have to kill it. You only have to get it halfway down. And that's a really big deal. And that is going to change up a lot. It's going to change build strategies. It's going to change offensive counter strategies. And it's going to change how people play and how they prioritize commands. And it may even lead to the Super Star Destroyer being something that's more for a casual fun game rather than a tournament winning game, because maybe that half damage, tremendous points to the other person ends up being not worth it. That's something we're going to have to see how that plays out. But go ahead and check out FFG's official streams. They have it on Twitch and on YouTube. You can watch the whole game, the whole stream. There was a lot of questions asked and answered. I think I just picked out some of the most interesting ones, and I think that's about it. I still have some other questions that I'd like confirmation on that they hadn't given, like how is gunnery teams going to interact? What happens if you deploy the Super Star Destroyer in the ambush zone and you've got asteroids everywhere and you can't put it there? I think you just lose. I think you just forfeit the game, or at least forfeit that ship. It's like I have little nuanced curiosities about that. And of course, Constantine, I was wondering if they were going to maybe ever FAQ him to maybe allow him to work with the Super Star Destroyer. But they answered a lot of questions, and this is definitely going to change the way that we test with the Super Star Destroyer going forward and once it finally hits. My biggest question for you guys is, if it ends up being a Gen Con pre-release, how in the heck are we going to get it home? I mean, it's huge. It's not going to fit in your luggage. It's not going to fit under the seat in front of you if you're flying. I mean, go to the FedEx store, mail it home, and then hope they don't break it, because it's gonna be incredible. I kind of hope it's not a Gen Con. I hope it comes out as a general release before Gen Con, because I really don't want to have to mail that thing home. It's gonna be something. All right, guys. Well, that's all I've got for you today. I want to thank all of you for watching. I want to thank all my patrons on Patreon. I want to thank all of the subscribers. I want to thank FFG for giving Armada some more attention. Great job from FFG. Armada's at a slow point right now. We're not getting a whole lot of releases all the time, so we're not even getting many. We're not even getting a good amount of releases. It's been a slow chapter for Armada. And them doing things like this definitely helps fill in those gaps, and it's appreciated. So thank you. Let's try to stay positive. 2019 is going to be we're going to have a really good third quarter. Armada is going to see a lot of brightness in going into 2020. I am sure of it. So let's stay positive and keep flying. All right, that's all I got for you guys. I want to thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.